Okay, hello to all our viewers and listeners out there. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to this very first edition of a series of discussions as we follow up to the FinTech and Digital Asset Symposium held in March of 2021 by the Bahamas Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Industry and Immigration. My name is Samuel Campbell, and I'm joined by the Director of Financial Services, Ms. Deborah Watson, and we'll be your hosts for this exciting first conversation. We will be talking all things fintech and blockchain technology, and I'm happy to welcome our first guest for this series, Mr. Stefen Deleveaux, President of the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, and Dr. Jillian Bethell, Co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of IslandBit Limited. Firstly, I will let our guests say one, two things about themselves before we get into the Q&A. I guess, Jillian, ladies first, you can go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Sammy. Thanks, Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Industry for having us start off or kick off this very entertaining, for sure, and robust series. I'm Jillian Bethell. I'm the co-founder and CEO of IslandBit Limited, as Sammy mentioned. Our business is about providing access to and education about cryptocurrencies. And we're sticking to that mandate and trying to bring fintech solutions as well as, or fintech and blockchain solutions to Bahamians and have them understand the space so they can maneuver it safely and to their advantages.
Thanks, Jillian. Stefen?
Sure. Again, thanks for having me. Stefen Deleveaux, President of the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance. For those who know me, know I've always been very passionate about the adoption of blockchain technology, different use cases, et cetera. What the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance does and what it's about is basically an advocacy group. We promote adoption, we promote education, we promote public policy. So in terms of public policy, there's basically what we're doing right now, the regulatory engagement. Government engagement, and then on the education side, it's general education from talks, workshops, the potential establishment of the blockchain clubs throughout the region, as we spoke about during the last talk, courses, hands-on engagement, things like that. That's the long and short.
Okay, great. Thank you both again for taking the time out. And I know you both are very focused on education and making sure people are aware of what's going on in the space and make sure they understand it. So I think it's very fitting that you guys are our first two guests on this series. So for the first question for you both to answer, what is the most interesting thing happening right now in the space, in your opinion? And what are the latest trends in the space that you think that our viewers should be watching or made aware of? Stefen, you can go ahead first.
So instead of one trend, I'll do like a series of trends, if that's okay. Just because this has kind of happened back to back. So these are things we've kind of touched on before, where you have last year, which was kind of, for those who do follow the space, you had the kind of rise of DeFi. This year is basically the rise of NFTs, which I know we'll talk more about a bit later. And then very quickly, because everything goes in threes. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but either by let's say end of this year or next year, you'll have the rise of DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations. And to define that in the easiest way possible, think of co-ops, worker co-ops, things like that. Collectives that are working together on a very equal playing field with low hierarchy structures and basically communities that are established through blockchain technology. Which kind of opens the governance in terms of democratization of whether it's capital raising, capital deployment, decision-making, again, governance, things like that. So that is the progression and the kind of trend that the super trend, you may call it, that we're seeing right now. It's interesting to see them all come together because they are all tied. Sorry, that was a lot, but.
No, I mean, that's good. I think you hit the nail on the head with those 3 areas that we definitely will touch on a bit as we discuss today, and we'll be watching going forward. Jillian, you
Yeah.
want to chime in?
Sure. I was hoping you let Stefen go first on that one, because Stefen is who I go to consult nowadays when I have no idea what's going on in the space because I'm too busy trying to do other things. But Stefen definitely hit the nail on the head with the 3 things he mentioned. But one thing I did want to mention, and in my role as, I guess, a consultant in the space, I think maybe about 2 or 3 times a month, projects come across my desk where either a lawyer or some investor or something wants to get a second opinion on a project that's happening. Most of these projects happen outside of the Bahamas. And this may be in the line of the DAO, the whole organization of a lower hierarchy and all of this stuff. But I've seen quite a few agricultural projects come across my desk in the last like 2 or 3 months, as well as projects that, and there's a grouping for this, but projects that allow electricity to be kind of purposed in a better way in this space, because we all know that there is some, impact on the environment when you start to think about mining and all of this stuff of cryptocurrencies or in the distributed ledger stuff. So this whole thing makes me know that there is a huge move in the space among the stakeholders in the space to sustainability efforts and possibly the sustainable goals.
I had a question. Thank you guys so much again for coming today. On the heels of our FinTech event here at the ministry, we've had a number of young people. The response has been overwhelming. They want to know more about the Alliance. They want to know more about Dr. Bethell. They want to know how much research is being done in terms of FinTechnology, and they want to know how to become a part of that. With that being said, and the amount of educational amount of information that we have online, certainly I'm following it as well. As you know, I'm also a member of the Alliance as well, and I look forward to those monthly insightful talks. But with that being said, information that is out there in global space, in terms of research here in the Bahamas, or in terms of the amount of information available on the ground and the data that's being collected in terms of FinTechnology, if I were a young person wanting to get into this space, where would I get that information?
I was waiting for Stefen to unmute, but he didn't. So I think,
okay.
Me and Stefen and the OGs who've been in this since, I don't know when, I've been in the space since 2017, Stefen a little bit earlier. All of the information that we found was online and digging through, forums and all of this stuff. But now, there's a whole bunch of companies and organizations like my company and Stefen's organization that are there to give this as a service, or give this as a gift to the communities that they live in. So, just for our clients right now, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about this later, for clients of IslandBit, even though we're not servicing the public right now, we still have a lot of our clients who call in and they say, hey, I need to understand this. Can you guys offer some time just for me to understand this, to make sure that what I'm doing is safe, or to make sure that what I'm doing is something that legitimate. So it's very, very true that people here in our community and elsewhere are definitely looking for this information. But the truth is, it's all there online. You just got to Google it. Yeah. Oh, just one small addition. In addition to all the myriad of information that's online, of course, you need to kind of vet that information out and make sure that what you're reading gives you the correct information and gives it to you succinctly. But in addition to that, there's now, university programs that touch on certain aspects of the industry, and there are very many of them. I mean, I've taken a couple of them. So if you're really looking to dig in, it's just a Google away.
Sure. So and that's, to be honest, that's part of what we do, right? So we have the monthly talks. They're usually on Zoom, but we live broadcast them to YouTube. So if you want to go on YouTube and search Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, our videos will come up, and obviously our account will come up. In addition to that, just like I think you were alluding to, we also have a newsletter. It's a small newsletter, but it keeps track of what's going on in the region, in the blockchain industry in particular. So that's two quick ways that will be regular. In addition to that, I'd say the best thing to do is just follow people who were very early in the space. So, like Vitalik Buterin, or there's someone named Andreas Antonopoulos, who is probably the core educator of the space. He's been giving talks, writing books for years now. And if I want to learn something new, I typically go to his content. And I would say he's the top person in the space. He wrote Mastering Bitcoin, Mastering Ethereum, excellent books. They're somewhat technical, but it's the best information you can get. In addition to that, like Jillian said, there's literally content everywhere. For the younger folks who do that and then at the same time want to keep a bit more of a, up to date, what's happening day by day kind of look into the space. It's going to sound weird, but everything happens on Twitter before everything else. Like because Twitter obviously is about access, right? So you have access to some of the developers that are working on these protocols, the business people in the space, things like that. So there are a lot of different ways. I'd say definitely start with like maybe small courses, some of the books, etc. But there's so many options.
I noticed the other day I was quite impressed in your interview with Commissioner Pierce from the American Securities Exchange Commission. How did you feel interviewing her, and the wonderful wealth of information she provided?
Honestly, that was an incredible interview, and I'm still kind of, that was over a month ago, and I'm still kind of shocked that it happened. And it was kind of an honor, to be honest with you, because she keeps up with everything that's going on. She's very friendly towards the industry, which is amazing for a regulator. And she understands things, and she's written some documents, some content about things like DeFi, what's happening in the space. And I definitely think it would be helpful in the long run for further kind of collaboration, further engagement with her and other people who think like her, to kind of bridge the gap basically towards like what they're doing and what we're doing.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, Stefen, I think I would have sent you guys a link about this OMFIF summit that was happening over the last couple of days. Director Watson would have tuned into some of them as well. And she was on that as well, Commissioner Pierce, and so many other people who are like, really into the space, people in the EU Commission's policy department, heads of Visa, and it was really what you're talking about now. The big people, the ones who have to lead the charge, coming together and discussing CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, the future of them. How we safely regulate them. So that was a very fascinating discussion in the course of 2 days. I've saved. I wasn't able to watch all of them, but I saved them because you can watch them later. And to your point, it's getting into events like that where you can learn, pick up information from the people who are really involved. And same thing, follow on Twitter. I was, every person who spoke, searching on Twitter, click and follow, because they will be sharing the information, the insights, the current news and developments in the space. So I think that's, use social media to your advantage. It's a free resource, right? So those are all great points. I think, in following up from the educational aspect, I think it's also important that we understand, how do participants who are new or already in, how do we safely get involved and participate in the space, right? So, all people now, you see Bitcoin is a little drop, but Bitcoin was going up. You have Dogecoin, you have Ethereum, you have so many different assets that are very popular now, and people want to get into it. They want to invest. But there's also always a downside, right? There's always some scammers or schemes going on. MLM marketing schemes, pose a great risk. The Securities Commission has spoken to it. What are things that people should be looking for or looking out for? What are red flags that would tell them, this person's telling me if I give them this amount of money, they'll buy this amount of Bitcoin for me and whatever. And they're telling me I'm getting 2% every week. And what are the things that people should be looking out for and to try and safeguard themselves and their assets?
All right, Stefan, I'll unmute for you. No, so Sammy, this is the bane of my existence, these MLM schemes. And if I don't get asked about them every weekend, and if I don't sit down and tell somebody why it doesn't make sense every weekend, then my name's not Jillian, right? Stefan and I both kind of smirked at something you said just now at the exact same time. And it was this idea of getting 2%, getting 2% returns on whatever money you put in. And depending on who I'm talking to, I attack this issue at a different angle, and that's definitely one of the angles because Bitcoin could go up and down 2% every hour, so it's a bit weird. But what I would say is the first thing that you would have to do is definitely, and I always start off with this because it was my entry point, I think. And I think Stefan's expressed, and I won't speak for him, but Stefan's expressed that this is not the ideal entry point for everyone, right? But just go out there and try to understand what money is from the start. I think people get a little bit intimidated because they didn't study finance or something like this, but just go in and understand what money is. And when you start to understand what money is, it's very easy to understand what this industry is not. And so MLM schemes, one of the first things I say is, if they're asking you for Bitcoin, but quoting the price in a fiat currency, run, right? They're not going to be trading, you're going to give them Bitcoin and they're not necessarily going to be trading FX for you. It kind of doesn't make sense because a lot of the principles are the same. I mean, maybe it's feasible, but it kind of doesn't make sense, right? If you can't use your credit card to kind of send them some money, and I know in some of these MLM schemes you can, so don't take this and use it as your litmus test. But if you can't, if you don't know exactly who you're sending money to, if you're being told, send this amount of fiat currency in Bitcoin, there's a reason that's happening. And then just from the economics of it, or just from the finances of it, like sometimes it just really doesn't make sense. If you send $300 worth of Bitcoin, you're getting 2% a week, like it doesn't really make a lot of sense, like this thing go with sense, right? So there's a lot of little things. And then some people, they come and say, hey, what about this coin? Does this coin look good? I don't ever try to speculate on anyone's coins, but if it's not listed on CoinMarketCap, that's because it's not listed on an exchange. If it's not listed on an exchange, it's going to be hard for you to take that coin and exchange it for a value that you can then use, like the bigger values like Bitcoin or something like that. So so those are a few things. And I guess I'll let Stefan talk now, but there's just a lot of little sensible things that you just need to kind of think about. And I have an article out there on MLM schemes and my thoughts on how to tell if this is a red flag or not. I don't have the link ready, but I will send it for addition to any captions that accompany this.
Yeah, definitely, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know where to start. MLMs, at the end of the day, if you have to do anything or you have to get a reward by bringing somebody else in, automatically it's a red flag. So as soon as you hear that, you know to go the other way. And to be honest, very early on, and very early on in CBA, a few years back, we were thinking about just having maybe say on the website or on the like a database of things that are scams, or at least things that are sketchy. We decided not to do that just because that does unfortunately open us up to risks of like lawsuits and things like that, because anybody could take something the wrong way, even if it is a scam. But I think the way Jillian's going about it is the right way, where you're not saying outright that it's a scam, but you're at least educating and giving a guide for what to look for, and things that may or may not be red flags, things like that. In terms of coins, yeah, and I really like Jillian's point of thinking about what money is, and then that kind of gives you a better understanding of what's happening in the space. So, and I'll only say this because your audience are full of intellectuals. If you want to look into the history of money, I would say there's a book by David Graeber called Debt: The First 5,000 Years. I think it's an excellent book, and a great way to start, just in terms of, because it is true, you have to understand the history of money and what constitutes money, what constitutes value, things like that, before you can really understand what's happening in the space. Because because obviously this blockchain crypto, it's all very different from what we knew before. So you kind of have to reset your thinking. That was just a plug. But in terms of coins, yeah, if you can't find it easily, and to be honest, I'm not a trader at all. I obviously focus more on the the tech side. But if it's not Bitcoin or Ethereum, not to say there are a lot of valuable ones other than that, but if you're starting off, maybe mess with one of those two, and then don't touch any others until you understand a bit more what you're doing. But that's just me.
Great, thank you for that. So I think I'll take away from that is we really should do our research, and we should ensure that we're educated sufficiently enough before we make serious financial decisions. I think that's common against if we're going to the corner store or if we're going down to the mall. So if we're going to be making investment, we should really do so with an educated background. I wanted to ask a question. How, from a ministerial point, I'm coming from the ministry now of financial services in our sector, how can the Bahamas become a leading regional FinTech hub? What cutting edge products and services can we offer? How do we take our financial sector to the next level?
I'm going to do this all day, Stefen, until you do something about it. This question I've been thinking about a lot lately. How, with our regulatory frameworks, do you take advantage, and how do we as a country, put ourselves in front? We've done this with the central bank digital currency, the sand dollar. We were the first to get on board and get this thing done. And I mean, just doing it is a big deal. And so if it's super successful, great. If it fails, great, because we've done it, we've learned something from it, we can move on and do better, right? So that's one thing. Now, with our regulatory environment here in the Bahamas, I think there's a few things, right? And a lot of these things, in order to make us that FinTech hub, in order to make us stand out in the world, a lot of these things may not be directly related to the tech, related to the regulation and stuff like that. So I think the first thing is, of course, we have to get that education going. There's no way we can import all the talent that's needed, right? So that education needs to start yesterday. I mean, it has been started yesterday, thanks to Stefen and other people in the space, me included, right? And then the other thing is we have to create an environment that attracts people who are going to do this knowledge share thing, right? We can learn we can learn a whole lot on the internet. But when it comes to that experience, those formalities and all that stuff, we have to be able to invite some talent. We do have talent here in the Bahamas for sure, but it's not talent that can reach as many people as we need to be reached, right? And then we have to create the right environment for this talent to want to come here and do things. So that environment includes things like the actual physical environment, their living space, and all of this stuff. it creates, it includes, some of the regulatory environments. And I think with the DARE bill and a couple other things that are not directly fintech related, we have a great regulatory environment for foreigners to come in and do some of this work, develop projects and stuff like that. And then the other thing that's directly linked to this is that we need to take all of the things that make our financial services great already and make sure that they're super applicable in this fintech space. So we are an offshore center, a great financial center, all these offshore banks and all of this stuff. We need to take all the things that they appreciate about our regulatory environment, our business environment and all of that stuff, and make sure that it all can translate over to the fintech space. And then that's when all the talent that we've educated, all the environment that we've created for people to come in and share their knowledge, this is where all of it's going to flourish, because we're able to then export our talent, what we produce and all of this stuff to the world. We've already started off well with the sand dollar, but we need to make sure that, going forward, we can maintain this, natively. We can maintain this through Bahamians, Yeah.
Thank you, Jillian.
That's why I let you go first, because I knew you had a better answer. So.
Okay, so next question, you're going to go first, but can you add to what Jillian said?
But yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Jillian said just now. And obviously, the environment is key, and it's been made obvious now. But for, from the regulator's perspective or from the government's perspective, there has to be engagement, like consistent engagement with the practitioners in the space, of people who are involved in it, the people who are following it as much as possible, really, so that these conversations are instructive, and that, from the regulator's perspective, they know how to handle things, they know what to do, but at the same time, they don't push too far ahead in terms of, heavy-handedness. So there can be like a nice, a friendly regulatory environment at the end of the day. But in addition to that, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, just following what's happening, keeping up, especially the conference that Sam just mentioned, that like even things like that, doing that on a regular basis, because there's so many points of value, points of entry, gems that you just kind of end up learning that you didn't know before, following I don't want to say books, but they're general publications that are typically happening, things like that. So yeah, and then again, engaging with practitioners on ways to either envelop or integrate these kind of technologies into what's happening, because there are so many ways that it could be done. It's just making sure it happens.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I think, building off of what the Bahamas was able to do with the sand dollar, we were ranked number one central bank digital currency. We've gotten great acclaim for it. Governor Rule was the first speaker at this event I spoke about yesterday. He's one of the head speakers. So he was on CNN the other day. So we have a lot of recognition internationally for being a leader in the space. So I think we should definitely keep up with the momentum, and maybe one day we could become the research and development hub as well for fintech, right? Using UB and using other persons in the space to really, keep on being those innovators that other jurisdictions follow. Like Christina Roll, Executive Director of the Securities Commission, would have said, at Symposium, that other jurisdictions are following our lead when it comes to our regulatory environment with the DARE bill and the DARE Act now, and those things that we're doing. So all great points. And I think, it's only up from there, but, we have to keep at it, like I said, keep the dialogue with the persons in the space. I guess in following up with that, one of the points that you raised earlier, Stefen, with regards to DeFi, DeFi is, attracting a lot of attention now. I read somewhere that, it has around $100 billion in market capitalization now. Major financial institutions like MasterCard, JP Morgan, UBS are now looking into it, or have already gotten into DeFi, or decentralized finance. People who don't know what DeFi is. But can you just explain that concept of DeFi? What are the benefits? What are the pros? How the Bahamas can embrace this area, and bring in public and private sector partners together to optimize the benefits and the risks.
Yeah. Sorry. And that's something that's, like I said earlier, it's been coming up since people really started paying attention to it in 2019, but it got really underway in 2020. And since then, NFTs kind of took the shine a bit, but DeFi is already back in resurgence because there are so many different companies, protocols, traditional financial entities that are looking into it now. But at its core point, it's basically just what it means, decentralized finance, meaning that there's just like blockchains where there are no middlemen, no in-betweens. That's really the point of what DeFi is, where you're kind of in a way recreating or refashioning the traditional financial markets, but without the same maybe without the same entities in between, or being able to have more of a say at an individual level or at a group level than just having to, go to a bank and wait for something to happen. It's just kind of more self-sovereignty, more control into what's happening. For example, the biggest aspect of DeFi right now is the idea of the AMM, which is the automated automated market maker. Which, as you all know what market makers are, it's kind of that same concept, but in a way where you're literally just using the blockchain technology and adding these different aspects to it for the same effect. For example, if me as an individual, I wanted to, actually, let me take a step back. So imagine you have an exchange, and this is what these automated markets are, they're exchanges. I want to buy Ethereum. Jillian wants to buy a stable coin, right? Like USDT, for example. Now, we would both have to go to this exchange to make that happen. So let's say, sorry, I'm selling Ethereum and Jillian's buying a stable coin. What I would do then, and sorry, this is going to get a little technical, but what we would both do is go to this exchange, and of course, to make sure that we can actually do trades, there has to be liquidity, as in any kind of financial market, right? So what would happen is other people across the world who we don't even know, they would be putting liquidity into this basically decentralized pool that, again, nobody can tamper with, nobody can edit or change or anything like that. It just runs on its own, which is why it's automated. So they're putting money into this pool, and we're using that same liquidity to do these trades, to buy and sell, and they're getting, and the incentive for them to put money into this pool is that they're getting fees from our trades. So that's kind of, I don't want to get too deep, but that's kind of the biggest thing that's happening right now in the DeFi space. And then of course there's things like P2P, peer-to-peer lending, crowdfunding, things like that, all based on blockchains, mainly on the Ethereum blockchain, but it's happening on others as well. Wherever smart contracts, wherever smart contracts are, you can do DeFi on. So this is kind of the big thing rising right now, and it's still very new, of course, but a lot of people are paying attention to it. A lot of people are trying to figure out how they can interact with it, and I think it would be an amazing thing for our financial services sector to properly, one, look into it, and to kind of utilize these same things to bring in, say, more liquidity, more markets, things like that.
I just want to add to it a little bit and bring it to the perspective of the Bahamas. We're archipelagic region, and we have, people in rural areas who don't have access to finances. Of course, our CBDC takes care of a lot of this, right? But this just gives them access to their own finances in their phone. In this way, and if we imagine that a stable coin, which pretty much does the same thing as a sand dollar in a lot of instances, and for this purpose does the same thing. Let's say that Stefan and I, we need money to develop our area. And you too, Sammy, and so you guys have some liquidity, right? And I'm only bringing this perspective so that we can understand the real benefits. If we have money sitting in our bank accounts, kind of the way the banks do, the banks are able to lend out our money, but on their terms. In this instance, and with crowdfunding, we're able to then take our liquidity and be able to give it to the people who are really in need for low fees and for less restrictions to access than anyone else. So I think one of the pilot things that happened with the sand dollar was that they went to Exuma, and I think one of the projects that they were looking at doing was having peer-to-peer lending happen in some type of way, or maybe not peer-to-peer lending, sorry, microcredit happen in a way that entrepreneurs in the pilot area would be able to get money for their businesses. Microcredit, this is, less than $500, would be able to get money for their businesses. This is an application where DeFi could definitely work, especially with peer-to-peer lending and the crowdfunding stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, just quickly gonna sorry, in the same way that the sand dollar is basically about bringing digital currency to people who had no access to it before, DeFi is also largely about bringing really financial markets or money markets to people, again, people who didn't have any kind of access to that before. So it's really like everything about this space is about democratization. So this is more about democratizing that.
I was just going to chime in on what Jillian had said, using sand dollar as a way of financial inclusion for those smaller islands, individuals that are pretty much far away, removed from the centralization of financial services here in Nassau, giving them access to credit, to liquidity, to capital, etc. And blockchain distributed ledger provides that sort of space and platform for that to take place. Mm-hmm. So another question I wanted to ask is a little bit more kind of away from financial services for a sector. How in the overall, say, financial technology world can we include other sort of industries, not just financial services, but we can use the products from financial services to integrate other industries, let's say, for example, agriculture, say perhaps in Trinidad or Tobago, Stefan. Your association, the Caribbean Alliance, Blockchain Alliance Association, how do you bring people together and outside of the traditional ways of networking? Tell me how in that network space you're able to put the minds of persons together, perhaps not in a financial terminology, but in terms of how we bring people and products together in that sort of space, so products and services can be shared across a platform. Can you explain in the simplest terms for people who are not so technologically savvy, how do you do that?
It's actually a really good question. So that's why I really like these talks, for example, that we do every month, because it kind of brings in people from all over, right? So for example, the one with Commissioner Peirce and a gentleman from Jamaica, and then the NFT one, which was with one of the kind of OG NFT collectors, as well as an IP lawyer. So it was very interesting to have that kind of discussion. Our very first one was with someone who's using blockchain technology for microcredit for farmers in Jamaica. So they have, better access to funding, to payments. And then at the same time, the other individual, and these are all throughout geographically. The other individual was using blockchain for agriculture, really for the supply chain aspect, where you have literally blockchain technology sitting on top of these supply chains, so that throughout the whole process of what we call farm to fork, for example, you can always track maybe the different ingredients or the different vegetables or whatever. So you can, so that you have that verification and authentication of where it came from, whether or not it was tampered with. So that kind of thing is very important. And just having these discussions is is good for everybody because it kind of opens people's minds to what could be done. And that's why the goal is to bring in people who are actively working on these things, because you can read about things like that, but if you're not talking to someone who's actively in it, then there's only so far you can go. And then outside of that, it is largely traditional kind of networks, so that people just can have discussions with each other. But it does bring in that kind of that dialogue where, you know, you set up meetings, you create new networks, you bring people in. Someone may decide to hire someone or partner someone, things like that. So I hope I answered that fully.
Just one more. So just to be clear, so we understand, and for this in the simplest terms possible, distributed ledger technologies can make us better. It can help facilitate trade, movement of people, of goods, expand our industry in terms of, say, trade and industry, perhaps even immigration. We can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the supply chain aspect to me is one of the most important, as well as things like, and a lot of people have been talking about this idea of a settlement network where you have, you know, the Bahamas has its own CBDC, the OECS has their own CBDC, Jamaica is currently working on theirs. I think Haiti will actually soon be working on theirs. And the idea really is, if you can, when all those are built up, and of course they will go throughout the rest of the Caribbean, you won't need SWIFT, to be honest. You can have all of these CBDCs kind of interacting as their own network, and that would revolutionize trade for the Caribbean. That, you know, because you would have that instant, that secure, that automatic, basically trade network, settlement network back and forth. And if you have that, if you have, say, you know, more ownership of the supply chains, maybe even just between Caribbean countries that are run by blockchain, which again gives that authenticity, that verification, things like that. Just those two things alone would massively increase and evolve the way trade is done in this region. So I think those are, once we can get those two things happening, we would be in a completely new kind of framework in terms of trade in the Bahamas.
So
essentially leapfrog us a few years into the future.
Like 20.
Jillian?
yeah, so I just wanted to contribute a little bit here, and I'll try to make it quick, right? So a Bahamian who is very involved in the space as well, quite a bright young man, his name's Tamar Pinder. He mentioned there was something that he always said, and in his very down-to-earth Freeport accent, because I didn't know Freeport had an accent, but he definitely has some little twang there, right? One thing that he always said was, y'all think this just it? He would say, cryptocurrency is just blockchain plus money. When you take blockchain and add it to agriculture, you take blockchain and add it to custom, you take blockchain and add it to fisheries, any of these things, you have amazing things that happen. I just want to give a couple of examples on what that could be. So my mom was formerly the assistant director of marine resources. And so naturally growing up, I had to work there in the summers, right? And I got to learn quite a bit about our marine resources, the seafood industry particularly, and seafood traceability, as well as, and we're actually dealing with this right now, as well as food safety in regards to our seafood industry. Right now, we have an issue with not being able to trace where a source of bad conch is coming from, right? And because of what I know about, you know, the little I know about food safety, or the lot I know about food safety, it's not the conch, but the water that the conch is in, right? That's causing this problem. One of the big problems that's happening in the seafood industry in terms of trade is that we don't have the technology here in the Bahamas to be able to track the levels of you know, lead or magnesium or all of these things in the water where we catch our fish. And so places that may want to buy our fish based on their regulations, we can't sell it to them. And so with blockchain technology and the Internet of Things, basically testing the water supply or testing the actual seawater where fish are caught, we can actually develop a product. And I'm talking about this because I'm working on one. We can actually develop a product where you can go ahead and test the water, and then the traceability that's involved with it will show anybody, any regulator around the world, any fish supplier around the world, down to the chef who cooks the fish, exactly where the seafood came from, exactly what the water is like, and all of that stuff. So this is a perfect example of how we can take blockchain technology and apply it to some of our industries to make trade better. In addition to that, Stefen and I attended a youth blockchain seminar hackathon thing, where we saw, I think, about 2 or 3 projects where very young people are finding ways to assess the supply of agricultural products on the Family Islands, and then match it up with the demand elsewhere in the Bahamas, so that those agricultural products can be priced properly. And once they're priced properly, they could be sold en masse to BAIC, you know? And so these are just very simple products. And then of course, Stefen spoke about traceability just now, and not just traceability in the seafood industry, but that could be traceability in luxury goods, that could be traceability in agriculture, that could be traceability with I guess you can apply that to land. So you can definitely apply some of these things to land ownership, not quite traceability, but along the same lines. And so there's any number of things that we can do in the blockchain space, match it up with a different industry, and make things run a lot more smoothly, or actually make things happen here in the Bahamas.
Great. That was, a data dump just now of good ideas and ways that we can really use these types of technologies to improve the way we do things. And I took some notes, and I'm sure we can do what we need to do to try and push forward these type of recommendations. Okay, let me quickly, looking at time now, get to, I guess, one of the final 2 questions. So I definitely want to touch on NFTs as we close. But firstly, I want to ask about stable coins, right? So Jillian, I know in your presentation at the symposium, you talked about the level of adoption locally, right? We now have spoke before about big financial institutions, and even more so like Visa and other credit card companies using crypto strategies while making safer and wider use of crypto payments, and enabling users to even cash out and make fiat purchases with crypto. They also tease the possibility of enabling direct crypto payments. So what are your thoughts generally on the future of stable coins in the space? And where do you see levels of adoption maybe a year from now?
Yeah, so stable coins definitely have their use case. I think in the Bahamas, they have a very specific use case that I won't go into too many details about, but let's just say stable coins in the Bahamas are the epitome of access to decentralized financial markets. And so when you start to think about Visa and all of these other services, kind of taking this crypto approach, they're definitely using stablecoin rails. And Stefen, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, because Stefen really digs deep into these things. But we have the CBDCs, we have stable coins, and there are definitely some parallels between the two, and then there's definitely some differences between the two. In the places where they differ, stable coins definitely have a niche. And for the near term, I would think that because of this niche, and a lot of this is infrastructural, because of this niche, they have, in the next year or so, there's definitely some short-term advantages. For instance, I know in the banking industry, and Stefen talked about the ACH not too long ago, but in banking, and we're talking remittances, we're talking about cross-border payments and stuff like this, it's pretty simple now if all currencies are represented by stable coins, and then there can be an exchange just through even a decentralized exchange if you want. There can be an exchange between the stable coins of different nations to exchange for the other. And if it's decentralized, it's super cheap, right? So I think when you start to see that Visa is talking about these things, it's kind of because this technology makes a lot more sense than what's traditionally happened. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll just add quickly to that. Everything Jillian said is 100% right. But especially for, these DeFi applications, stablecoins are going to be the most important aspect of those, where you have this kind of trade happening. And it'll still be fairly niche, but it'll shoot up pretty quickly. This kind of global trade happening between different stablecoins. Maybe you have like USDT, USDC, for example, UKDC or something like that, where people, throughout are either just trading with each other or doing something else in terms of maybe peer-to-peer lending or again, adding liquidity, things like that. So I definitely see stable coins being, and I know this again is a little further technical wise, but I definitely see stable coins being the kind of backbone of DeFi as an entire industry. So yeah, that globally they're going to be incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys said, and I've been reading as well that stable coins have become a safeguard against inflation, right? So in places where there's a lot of pressure on currencies, a lot of people are getting into stable coins as a hedge against their currencies, the inflationary pressures on their currencies. And I also think it'll be interesting to see, how what wins, stable coins or CBDCs, right? Because I know, like with Facebook's stablecoin, they've rebranded it now to call it Diem, which was once Libra. It awoke a lot of the central banks across the world to be like, okay, hold on, we have our own digital currency, right? So it's kind of a race against the public and private digital currency. So I think that'll be interesting, I guess, a year from now to see, the EU is looking at doing a digital currency. And I think some reports say that 86% of central banks globally are exploring it. China's obviously already there. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. I guess, it's been mentioned, sprinkled throughout the conversation so far. So finally get into it. For the people out there who may have just heard briefly about it, I want to know more. What is an NFT? What is this thing? How can someone buy one? Can you guys get into briefly what an NFT is?
Yeah. So the definition, which is funny because that's like the hardest part, is non-fungible tokens, where mainly, fungibility means exchange. So you have a dollar or a Bitcoin, for example, those are fungible because $1 will always be equal to $1. One Bitcoin will always be equal to one Bitcoin. Non-fungible just means they're unique. So that, if I have a non-fungible token, that is not equal to another non-fungible token. It's just uniqueness at the end of the day. But aside from all that, NFT really, it's what it is, and it's actually very similar to what's happening with like supply chains and agriculture. We're using blockchains to track or provide authenticity for what's happening during the entire process. So when NFT is similarly, it's basically a digital certificate of authenticity, meaning that if you have digital media, because they're typically for digital media, they can be used for other things, but mainly for digital media, you have a piece of art, but not physical art, digital art, or a song recorded digitally. Those can be copied, those can be downloaded, those can be pirated, and you can't really do anything to stop that. For example, digital artists, they get their art stolen all the time because people just go on a website, take it, download it, and use it for their own thing. And sometimes those artists, they get completely locked out because someone so say, for example, you have a very small local Bahamian artist. They're not known, and they do an amazing piece of digital art. They put a series together or something like that. a famous artist can chance upon that, see that, steal it, and express it as his own. And then that, that Bahamian artist has no recourse. He can't go and say, or she can't go and say, oh, that's actually mine, because, you can't really verify it. So with this NFT, with this digital certificate of authenticity, all you're really doing is attaching a hash, which is a digital fingerprint, really, a secure digital fingerprint. You're attaching a hash of the image, whether it's an image or a song or whatever, that piece of media, to the blockchain. So all it really means at the end of the day is that you have a kind of certificate, you have some kind of authentication, some kind of verification, which really is the core of how it works at the end of the day. And because it's gotten so popular in the last few months, and it's kind of been shocking to see how it rose up so fast. But that's mainly because a lot of artists realized that they can now basically sell their digital art without someone just going up and downloading it and saying, okay, this is mine now. And the same for music. Art has been the main thing, but music is definitely going to come up pretty quickly, I think, at least in the next few months, maybe the next year. Yeah, it's really just provided an avenue for digital artists to trade and to kind of sell their goods online in a way that they weren't able to before.
Great, thank you. That was good. Jillian, anything you want to add onto that?
Sure. Stefen I'll try to be quick. It's never quick when you're talking about NFTs and trying to explain it, but I was just trying to figure out if I was really going to go into it, but I'll just tell you a bit of a joke. Stefen and I were laughing at it today, and I hope my mom does not see this, because this morning she sent me a text message. She's like, hey, can you come see me? I want to talk about NFTs, right? And then the thing with my mom is she's always like, look, all of these new things, I have to understand them because people expect me to know what these things are because I'm your mom, right? And so she starts asking me about NFTs, and she kind of had it backwards. So I used the $5 bill to kind of explain it to her. And Stefen did a good job just then, but I'll tell you what I told her. If you had a tattered $5 bill and a crisp new one from the central bank, they're both worth $5. Down the line, when nobody is using dollar bills anymore and they're long past history, if you have a tattered $5 bill and you have a crisp $5 bill, the tattered one is going to be worth a little bit less than the crisp one. Right now, when like Stefen said, if you have a dollar bill, if you have Bitcoin, these all have the same value. They're totally interchangeable. Those are fungible tokens. When something is not interchangeable because somehow, a serial number on it makes it number 1 versus number 43, number 1 is going to be worth a little bit more because it becomes non-fungible. In this instance, these things are created non-fungible. They're not created equal to start with. Even though you may have 100 versions of the same thing, number 1, and Stefen taught me this, number 1 is not going to be, number 43 is not going to be as valuable as number 1. So this is the difference between fungibility and non-fungibility. But I think the easiest way to break down some of Stefen's big words is this thing expresses your ownership. I swear, because Stefen has some big words that I don't even understand, right?
Sorry, but
is that what you're doing is putting your ownership of this thing on the blockchain. And so once again, the example that I used this morning, my mom was telling me about something on CNN where there's a popular image that was on the web for a long time, and the owner of the image made an NFT of it and then sold it for $430,000. In addition to this, my mom had some idea of NFTs, so I have no idea if she was going to decide to paint something in paint on her Windows computer and then sell it as an NFT. But she started asking me, basically, what happens? And I told her, what happens is that number 1, first thing is, if she has ownership of this thing, she can decide if she's going to make it one of one or one of many, right? And in this instance, she decided to make it one of one. So now she owns the rights to this image. So if this image appreciates in value, say it becomes famous for some reason, or it becomes used a lot, then the value of that image goes up. And so the person who owns it can earn money on appreciation. But in addition to owning it, you own any royalties that come with the actual ownership of it. So if she takes that image and decides to use it on an album cover, or decides to use it on a t-shirt, or decides to loan it to Apple for a background on their desktop or something like this, she gets royalties from that. And as more and more people use it in the future, then the value of the actual ownership goes up, you know? So this is how I was able to explain it. But in the future, I think we can definitely see a world where everybody owns the rights to everything that they create. And that's going to be the future of the world. You only get to use it if you have the ownership of it, and you only get to allow use of it if you have the ownership of it. And it goes along with contracts where you get the royalties for it as well.
Yeah, that's really, I think it was really simple and great explanations. And I told Stefen before we started, I watched the NFT talk he had on his on the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance's YouTube channel, which is really good. I encourage everyone to check it out to for a deeper dive into it. And Professor Evans, who's an attorney, was speaking kind of my language, which he said it's kind of like a deed to a house, if you can use an example of that. So yeah, I thought it was interesting because I first heard about it when it came. I'm a big sports fan, an NBA Top Shop, right? And it's like an NFT for highlights and dunks and things like that. So I thought, you know what is this thing? Let me learn more about it. So yeah, great explanations, and I'm very sure most people took away a great understanding of NFTs.
Just want to throw in quickly, Sami, I was telling you this yesterday. There's a small surprise coming on that front. I was hoping I could mention it here, but I can't yet because it hasn't been pushed yet. So, but I'll let both of you know.
Definitely, man.
Well, you need to mention it. Make sure I come back here.
Yeah, I agree.
I know we're kind of running out of time.
It's nothing big. It's a little fun.
Yeah, I mean,
I know we're almost out of time, but I really do have a question I need to put to Dr. Bethell for all the young ladies and all of the, I know you are an advocate for women in the space, and we've had a number of calls into ministry wanting to know more about you. Can you just give a word of encouragement to the young female entrepreneur, and that may motivate and encourage them to continue in a path of entrepreneurship in blockchain technology, please?
Sorry, oh man, my number one piece of advice is just do it. Just hop in and do it. Sometime last year, I started creating my own cryptocurrencies just to play around with it. Just get in there and do it, because if you're passionate enough about it, you're gonna keep doing it. If you get in there and you do it and you're not passionate about it, you can stop doing it. You can figure out where you're supposed to be. So, slapping up, just do it. Right? Just get it done. No, but specifically from a woman's point of view, and in addition to this whole idea of just do it, if you don't just do it, you're going to find a whole bunch of reasons to not do it. And at some point you're going to look at it and realize that none of those reasons made sense. So I know I'm oversimplifying this, but really it is that simple. Just do it. Just get in there and do it.
Thank you. Sami?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice. With everything, right? We're in a time now where this is the time now to take chances. What do you have to lose? So I definitely agree, Jillian. Great advice there. I spoke to Jillian before, and she asked how long this would be, and I said, like 30 minutes maybe, and then you guys would be done. And here we are, an hour plus later. But thank you guys so much. This has been a very enlightening and riveting discussion. Before we finally wrap up, is there any last words, anything you need to plug going forward from our guests in 20 seconds?
I think I need to do a little bit more justice to the last question I was asked, and I am going to do a little bit more justice and just say, look, in addition to just doing it, just reach out, okay? Because it ain't a lot of us, so I'm not hard to find. It's only a few Jillians on the island. Just reach out, all right?
And I guess, Jillian, what's your contact information so people, they can find you on Twitter?
I mean, you can email me. It's Jillian with a J at islandbit.co. And also you can find me on social media with handles like PJillian or Jillian, or I don't really know my handles, but you can probably find me on Twitter and Instagram as PJillian or just PJillian. I don't really remember them. Yeah.
Yeah, so like all the social media, pretty much everything is under my full name, Stefen Deleveaux. And then if you want to find the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, you have the website is cbahub.org, that's cbahub.org. And at the very beginning of the website, there's a small link. You could sign in for the newsletter, and then every month you'll get just a quick recap of things that are going on in the space. Resources that are there, and on YouTube there is, again, Caribbean Blockchain Alliance on YouTube. You can find all the videos and whatnot, so definitely check it out.
At IslandBit242, that's the surefire way to find me eventually. I'll respond at some point once the information gets to me. So IslandBit242 on all social media.
Thank you so much. As Sami is about to wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much to Stefen Deleveaux from the Caribbean Alliance, Blockchain Alliance Association. Dr. Bethell, thank you so much for the words of encouragement, and certainly for inspiring our young women to just go ahead, do it, and reach out. Sami?
Yeah, I want to echo those sentiments. Thank you guys for taking the time. I always learn a lot listening to you guys on whatever platform or forum you guys are on. Always enlightening and enriching conversations and information. I thank you, Director Watson, for also being someone who's pushing, the FinTech in the space and active ministry. And I think the ministry can say that we look forward to further engagements with our stakeholders and learning more about the space, learning more about how we can push the space forward, and so we can become that regional FinTech hub that we are renowned for globally. So we look forward to the next time you guys come on. This hopefully won't be the last time. And we look forward to the other things you guys will be doing in the future. And all the best. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Much, guys.
Thank you to our viewers. Take care.
Okay.